Zombies and Zombettes, my name's Parallax Abstraction, and welcome back to Retro Flashback Halloweek! Okay, so I told you I was going to mix things up a little bit, and we are definitely doing that. So, we're not only going to be taking a look at a game that's quite a bit different from the others we've seen so far, but we are taking a look at our first Amiga game. Yes, indeed. This is the first of what I hope is going to be a very large number of Amiga titles that we talk about on the show in the future. But thought we'd start off with a pretty different one. So, this is a title called Zombi, originally released in 1986 for the Amstrad CPC, but we are looking at the Amiga version, as I stated. We're checking it out through an Amiga 500. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of the company who made this before. There's some small little operation from France, apparently. I don't know. I think it's pronounced Ubisoft. I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of them before, but I hear they're going places, and they're going to be the one to watch going forward. So I guess we'll see what happens here. I don't know. Yeah, all right. Anyway, but I got to tell you, man, this is interesting because this is actually Ubisoft's first ever game. This is the first thing they ever put out, and man, does it show. This logo down here, check that out. Is that 80s or what? Woo, boy. Looks a little different today, doesn't it? Okay, so what are we taking a look at here? Well, this is an interesting title. This is a multi-character, multi-screen RPG title. They often call these flick screen RPGs. A lot of the old D&D titles were like this, Eye of the Beholder, games like that. But this is different because this one, well, it's kind of Dawn of the Dead, really. You are a group of 4 people whose chopper has become stranded on the roof of a shopping mall in a post-zombie outbreak world. Tell me if you haven't heard that before, right? Yeah, the premise is not necessarily hyper original, but it's got some cool ideas. And this is a title that maybe in a modern perspective doesn't necessarily hold up super well, but it's really kind of interesting in the way it does things and in sort of the atmosphere and environmental design and whatnot it has. So I thought it was worth talking about here. So, the idea is pretty straightforward. You are this group of 4 survivors, and you... Oh, I do love that. Do love that zombie death noise. I just think that's hysterical. And you're a group of 4 survivors, and your goal is to secure this mall, get your chopper fixed, and get the hell out within a certain period of time. Maybe kind of sounds like Dead Rising a little bit too. Who am I to judge, right? But this is what's cool is this is not... You can't really use the term open world game, I guess, but this is an open concept game, I guess, in that you are in this mall, and you can choose to pursue this game sort of however you want. Hey, look, there's an Atari logo. That's kind of amusing. I just noticed that. You can go through this however you want. So there's multiple levels to this mall. There's all sorts of different stores, as you can see, that are all uniquely designed and all have their own sort of unique features and differences. And they all have different things that can be of use. So there's weapons, there's food, there's a videotape you can get that tells you the effective way to kill zombies, which, you know, I've seen enough zombie fiction since then. No, you just shoot them in the head, yo. But your goal is fairly simple. But what makes this game interesting is it's really about the thrill of the hunt and the thrill of exploration. Because truth be told, if you go look up a walkthrough for this game, you're going to beat it in about 5 minutes. If you know the critical path through this game, it's cakewalk. There's really nothing to it. And the idea behind this that made it challenging is that you're dumped into this mall with these 4 characters, and you really have no idea what to do. Like, you know your core objective, it's get your chopper fixed and get out. But you don't know really anything besides that. There's no objective markers, there's nothing to point you to tell you to where you have to go. There's nothing to even tell you where in the level are the items and tools and other such things that can actually help you progress on your quest. There's really, you're just dumped here, and they're like, all right, you're in a mall, there's zombies, are you a programmer? You figure it out. And that's what's kind of cool about this, is you've got to go just sort of look around and figure things out. And that's the way a lot of games were back in this era. It was really, it just sort of left you to, in many ways, create your own adventure and just sort of find out what you wanted to find out. And to be fair, elements of this game, like a lot of older adventure games, are basically powered by moon logic. I mean, hey, are you a programmer? Contact Ubisoft. I hear they like their programmers over there. And your goal is just to sort of, figure it out. And it can be really tough. Some of the puzzles in this and some of the steps in which you have to take are really complicated and kind of don't make a lot of sense. And it could take hours and hours and hours of retries to really figure out what it is you have to do. And this is kind of the problem. You're sort of seeing the critical flaw with this game here right now, which is that, number one, while the atmosphere is kind of neat, at least from a visual perspective, number one, there's very little sound to this game. The walking zombies make kind of a weird sound. As you heard earlier, when I shoot one, it's just downright comical the way they die. Wait for it. Like, why do zombies sound like that, man? It's just so funny. And the visuals are neat, but the audio is kind of lacking, and there isn't necessarily a lot of tension to this, because what will happen is you'll walk into an area that may have a zombie in it, but you want to avoid him. Kind of all you got to do is just move to another screen. Oh, there's a zombie here. I don't like. Oh, there he is. Oh, no, there he is. Oh, no, we'll go over here. Oh, we're safe now. You see what I mean? It's just that's kind of unfortunate, in that it is kind of dull in that respect, I guess. And what is there in terms of real imminent threat in here? Well, there is one. The zombies will kind of at a random interval attack you. And if they can't take a lot of damage, you can either shoot them, or if you are unarmed, you can just fight them off, if you will. You can just sort of wail on them a few times. And they don't necessarily have a lot of hit points, but the thing is, neither do you. And if you run out of hit points, your party member will become one of the zombies that you'll have to fight. And if you take too long or whatnot, you will get yourself turned, and you got to be careful about that, because their health items in this game are fairly rare, and you want to make sure that you don't tempt fate when you don't have to. But it is not exactly high tension. Truth be told, you can avoid a lot of the combat in this by just moving fast enough. And yeah, that's a little lame, I suppose. And as far as I know as well, to be fair, I have not played till the end of this game, but as far as I know, if you do manage to find a gun, it's unlimited ammo and durability. So if you're good with your headshots, then you can just sort of kill them all off. The difference is, of course, that zombies will come back to life eventually, and there is a more permanent solution for getting rid of them. I won't bother spoiling that here, but there is definitely a way to eliminate them on a more permanent basis that you will have to figure out later. And later in the game, there are other kinds of enemies that will come into play as well, and you will have to deal with them as well if you want to get yourself out of here in one piece. So, but the thing that's neat about this is that while this game is in some ways unforgiving in the sense that you can save, but you're on the clock and you have certain things you have to do, and if you lose all your people or you can't complete it in time, you're dead. What I think is really cool about this game, and technologically impressive for the era as well, is the fact that you have 4 party members and you can switch between them at any time, and the game will remember where they were. and sort of allow you to coordinate that way. So you can send one player off to scavenge for one type of thing. You can send another player off, another character, I should say. This is a single-player game. But you can send off another character to get something else or to deal with a zombie infestation somewhere. You can have one person focus on guns, another on melee, things like that. And the game will remember that, and you can position them all in different places inside the mall in order to sort of min-max your strategy in that way and make the best use of the time that the game gives you. I think that's interesting because a lot of the party-based sort of RPG, D&D titles and whatnot that utilized a mechanic kind of like this generally didn't allow you to really separate your party members very much. They sort of moved as one cohesive unit. So if you wanted to separate them off and have one person go do one thing and one do another, you couldn't do that in a lot of these kinds of games. And that was kind of... Now we're outside here, as you can see. Walking down the road. Oh, dear. So you can see one of the major problems here. Patrick was like, I'm out of this mall. I'll see you guys later. And oh, God. So... that is a learning experience, ladies and gentlemen. That is the game teaching you where it thinks your critical path is. So that was what was sort of innovative about this, was the fact that you could split your party members up and have them all meet different fates and do different things. They didn't have to move as a cohesive group, which was kind of neat. Now, due to technical limitations as well, you can switch to another character like this. This guy's sitting on the roof by the chopper, while this other guy has a zombie walking right in front of him, and of course, anything in progress with that zombie stops when you switch away. But, 1989 was still pretty cool. So, why are we here talking about this game? Well, I think it's kind of historically significant because this is the first game from a company who has become a monolithic powerhouse in the video game industry. But also because I think this is, while it doesn't necessarily hold up very well, this game was actually fairly well thought of back in its day. And while it doesn't necessarily hold up very well today and is kind of plodding and a little bit boring in many ways, I think it's neat because it sort of stands out at the time. The majority of the games like this... Just gonna have this guy take a nap in the furniture store. The majority of games like this were fantasy-based, often D&D-based, and while a lot of them were very good, they were kind of all the same. This was different. Yeah, it was kind of a rip-off of Dawn of the Dead and the whole idea of zombies in a shopping mall, but it nonetheless took a type of video game that was mired in a lot of samey design tropes and did something a little different with it. And it was challenging, but it was really neat to explore as well. And it had an interesting sense of tension and atmosphere. There's not a lot of sound, there's not a lot of music, but that was by intent. It was to make you feel like you were truly exploring this very abandoned place and that you largely were totally alone and that you didn't have a lot of other things to count on. You had to keep your wits about you, and while the zombies may have been slow and generally not a major threat on their own, you can't face a lot of them in a row if you're not quick about it. So you nonetheless had to be very, very careful because you lost all your people or ran out of time, you got to start over. And that was how these games created challenge. If you knew the way through it, sure, you could beat it in like 5 minutes, but that wasn't what made these games cool, and that wasn't what you had to learn about them. So for that point, I think it's something worth experiencing. Like I said, it doesn't hold up very well. Truth be told, a lot of the D&D games are kind of better at this than this was. But I think it's pretty neat. And Ubisoft clearly has some kind of fond memory for it as well, because those of you who bought a Wii U at launch might remember Zombie U, which was actually a really neat zombie survival game that had very little to do with this other than the fact that it had zombies in it. And everyone thought the name was kind of dumb, but the name Zombie U was actually a play off the title of this game. And I think it's neat that Ubisoft actually still has some fond memories for their history and where they originated and came from. And nobody, myself included, knew what that title meant on the Wii U game, and we thought it was kind of dumb. But it was actually sort of a little homage to what started this company off. And it says something. Most of the big Ubisoft games these days, they're talking in the press that they have like 1,000 people working on most of the Assassin's Creed games. And this game was made by like 6 people back in the 80s. And it's really quite amazing where the industry has come and where Ubisoft has come in general as well. But I think this is something, it might be worth experiencing. If you like this kind of flick screen gaming and want to see something a little bit different that has some cool ideas to it and a really good sense of exploration and tension, you might want to pick this up and give it a shot. Make sure you don't play it with a walkthrough, and you may have to restart it a few times to get to the end, but there's something neat to experience here. Unfortunately, there is no way to get this digitally as far as I know, so you're probably going to have to find yourself a copy of it. I would have really liked to have seen like an unlockable version of this on the Zombie U disc. I think that would have been kind of cool, but I guess that would have been tricky to put together. But this is not necessarily the most action-packed, exciting game that we've taken a look at on Halloweek, but I think it's an important one and shows sort of a different spin on the idea from the era. So, the game is Zombi, published and developed by Ubisoft originally in 1986. We are looking at the 1989 Amiga version. Yeah, it's neat. It's kind of, I think it has some historical relevance, but it may not be up to the standards of today's gamer. But something worth taking a look at and an interesting historical piece. My name has been Parallax Abstraction. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.